Welcome to Insight, a collaboration between TV6 and the Quad City Times Business Magazine. Like the publication, we are taking an in-depth look at the local business landscape. I'm Marcia Lenz, and today we are exploring the booming commercial real estate market and its role in the Quad City economy.
TV6 and the Quad City Times present Insight, the business journal of the Quad Cities.
Everyone has heard about the hot housing market, but commercial real estate, from retail to warehousing, is also seeing high demand. Tom Barton, associate editor with the Quad City Times, has been reporting on the topic. And Tom, what did you find out?
Yeah, so industrial property and land sales have fueled a resurgent commercial real estate market in the Quad Cities in the third quarter of 2021 after being rattled by the COVID-19 pandemic. So in Scott and Rock Island counties, they closed nearly $103 million worth of commercial real estate sales and leases during the first three quarters of last year. That's a more than 74% increase from a total of more than a total of more than 59 million compared to the same period in 2020. So you had robust e-commerce and retail sales combined with supply challenges that drove demand for warehouse and distribution space in the industrial sector. Despite the supply chain disruptions and worker shortages, Quad City developers say that they can't build new industrial space fast enough to keep pace with the demand. Russell Construction, for example, broke ground in October on a new 250,000 square foot pre-leased warehouse building in Northwest Davenport, and it's the first of 6 buildings totaling about 1.5 million square feet to be constructed as part of a planned 95-acre industrial park that they're planning on developing off of Northwest Boulevard in Davenport. And then obviously the big project that everyone is aware of is Amazon constructing its 2.9 million gross square foot fulfillment center along 155th Avenue north of I-80 in Davenport. So manufacturing is strong, supply chains are backed up, and there's a lack of existing inventory of quality, well-located modern industrial buildings. Even if retailers can get products shipped to the U.S., they still struggle to find places to store them and then move them along the supply chain. So as a result, land that sat idle for some time now is receiving activity, with investors purchasing real estate to hedge against inflation and take advantage of low interest rates.
All right, so we talk about the demand here, but it doesn't always coincide with the housing or residential side of it. Has the commercial market changed in recent years in terms of, you're talking more demand for warehousing and putting product? What have been the trends in recent years for this hot commercial market?
So I think on the retail side, obviously everybody is familiar with how the pandemic impacted retail, especially early on during the pandemic. But now what you're seeing is a lot of that pent-up demand come into play. And I think some of the new trends that you're seeing right now, and again, another big visual project for people is the TBK Bank Sports Complex and all the retail development that's going on around that. And then obviously we had the recent announcement about their expansion plans. You know, now they're planning on bringing in additional entertainment, recreation options with plans for the 3-story golf driving range. They're talking about another hotel, additional retail, and restaurant. So I think that is somewhat new to the market, new to the area, creating these kind of newer entertainment venues, and then kind of grouping and clustering restaurants, retail, things around it, you know, to create those mixed-use developments, you know, kind of almost creating maybe kind of, you know, a mini village where people live, work, and play. A lot
of people don't think about the importance of the commercial real estate market in terms of the overall economy. How important is it?
Well, obviously, you know, it's jobs, construction jobs, and then Also, it's important from a workforce standpoint because, for employers to be able to attract and retain talent, you've got to create the amenities that add to quality of life. Again, restaurants, shops, recreation, entertainment venues. So it's incredibly important to the economy in those respects. But also, in terms of looking at property values, property valuation, growth.
Yeah, a lot of factors.
A lot of factors.
And we're going to have more people to talk to about this subject. Thank you, Tom. And next, meet those people who have brokered these multi-million-dollar deals. Get their insight on the Quad City commercial market when we come back. Lots of exciting development projects going on in the Quad Cities. Recently, it was announced a multi-million-dollar expansion is coming to the TBK Bank Sports Complex at Middle Road and Forest Grove Road in Bettendorf, including a new state-of-the-art golf venue. That's a 3-story golf venue that will include 60 climate-controlled outdoor hitting bays, also an arcade, restaurant, bars. The expansion expected to bring in an additional 1 million visitors to the area each year.
It will help introduce hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of visitors to the Quad Cities, where we desperately need people to fill a plethora of different jobs. We know that once people visit the Quad City area, they fall in love with our culture, with the people, with the way we live, and this is a great opportunity to bring people to our area.
The development will also feature baseball, softball, soccer fields, along with a reconstruction of Middle Road and Forest Grove. Even a pedestrian bridge will be built to help connect the two sites. Now, that's just one of the commercial projects that we are talking about today. While not all as exciting as golf and sports, many are having an economic impact. So let's introduce you to some of today's guests. John Rule is president of NAI Rule Commercial. Dave Gellerman is CEO of Hawkeye Commercial, and Tom Barton is also joining us with the Quad City Times. All right, let's start with you, John. What is the current market right now? Would you describe it as hot?
I would describe it as hot. Our brokers are extremely active in most of the specific, disciplines of commercial real estate. Likely the biggest challenge today is finding existing product. There's a lot of competition. There are a lot of people looking for similar product, so much of our brokers are spending their time doing research and finding a building or a land site to fulfill the need of the client.
And it seems like we have space. Why does it seem like there's a shortage?
I would say that there are shortages in certain areas. So, okay. For instance, industrial, our market is extremely tight. I'm actually in the midst of a search right now. The gentleman called and said, I need 10,000 square feet, thinking I would be able to provide 10 or 12 options. We don't have a perfect option at all. So it's a lack of inventory.
It's kind of ironic because for years we had industrial parks that were developed and sat empty. That's changed. Those have all filled up?
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a lot of land under consideration for development to fulfill the demand.
And Dave Gellerman, is that perspective echoed by you?
Absolutely. There is, right now, there is a shortage of industrial warehouse property right now. And finding something, John's example of finding 10,000 square feet of industrial space right now, that's a little bit of a needle in a haystack.
Is there demand, though, for other areas of commercial? We've seen a lot of, say, chain restaurants pop up in the Quad Cities, Raising Cane's, Portillo's, Five Guys. Are you seeing more of those kind of chains interested in the Quad Cities?
My experience is yes, we're seeing it certainly along 53rd where you've seen that, also out at the TBK complex that you just mentioned, and also on the Illinois side, John Deere Road and that area it also needs to be fulfilled, and there are certainly restaurant chains looking, yes.
So if you don't have enough inventory, if you will, how do you get around this?
And that's the question right there, right? When it comes to industrial, you know, we have a couple developers that are building some spec industrial, which this community has needed for a long time, needed somebody to step up, and there's a couple of developers doing that right now, and I think Tom mentioned earlier that things are filling up right away, and I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to find the land, you have to find someone who's willing to put some money on the table and take the chance.
So what's the reason behind the hot market? I mean, are we assuming that it's just due to the same reason that everything is hot right now, pent-up demand, or is this something that was the result of groundwork that was laid, you know, years ago, and now it's finally come to fruition? I
think it's really based on how business is done today. Online sales have created a lot of opportunity and need for warehousing and storage. Also, you're seeing a large activity in manufacturing, and in order for those manufacturers today to create demand, control cost for their end user, they're trying to warehouse enough product because they're building it at a pre-inflationary or with less inflation, which will drive the cost up. So they're trying to create an inventory, and I think that's got a lot to do with it.
Speaking of inflation and supply chain issues that's impacting everybody, how is that impacting the commercial real estate market now? Typically, commercial real estate does well in an inflationary market. Can you explain that and what impact that's having?
From a supply chain, I'll go there first. We're seeing in some new development stuff that we're involved in that product is taking longer and longer to get. Steel has gone from 10 weeks to 10 months to get steel right now. Finding doors is, we were just in a meeting last week on a project, and the lead time on doors right now is months, and that's going to push a project back.
And what about existing buildings? Is there just no interest? We have empty storefronts. I'm thinking of the Schnucks grocery store in the Duck Creek Plaza area, and there's storefronts there that have sat empty for a while. Why aren't those moving in this hot market?
I would suggest on the Schnucks scenario, it's a really a unique positioning. It's an odd size. And most grocers, like a Hy-Vee, for instance, are 80,000 square feet plus. That space is what, 25 or 30,000 square feet?
It's a much smaller footprint.
Yeah.
The other wrinkle on the Schnucks deal is that Schnucks left in the middle of their lease, so they're still paying the rent. So the developer is looking for the perfect deal.
Yeah, they're not motivated
because,
right now.
Right, they're not motivated by money right now.
Yeah, oh, that makes sense. And what about refurbishing historic buildings? Is there that, that was a trend a few years ago. Is there any interest in that now?
There's a lot of interest in that now, but again, that boils down to inventory.
Right.
Downtown Davenport, at least the central business district is pretty picked over.
Yeah.
There just isn't much there that someone wants to renovate, and so we are seeing activity move west, where there is inventory. The new Y, or excuse me, the old Y will create an interesting opportunity just off the Centennial. Yep.
What are you seeing in the future? Is this sustainable?
Boy, I hope so.
I think it is. Interest rates are holding. We're seeing increases in interest rates, but in my 30-plus years in business, I think when I started off, it was a 10% interest rate. So what it's doing is, perhaps weeding out deals that maybe shouldn't happen in the first place.
Right.
People,
money is still very cheap right now,
yeah.
and people are not having a problem borrowing money and getting deals financed, and there's. Coming out of the pandemic, there's a backlog. When you talk about the Raising Cane's or the right next to that, the Mattress Firm, the Mission Barbecue, those were projects that were green-lighted prior to the pandemic and then put on hold during the pandemic, and then as we came out of it, they were green-lighted again. So there was a pent-up demand, which then when you have the supply chain issues, you still have to get the steel, you have to get as I said, the doors, you have to get all the materials, and there is a backlog, and it's created some pressure.
So at least with that backlog, we know that there's a little bit more time that this will continue. Okay, we will let that be the end for right now. We're going to take a break, and up next on Insight, hear from a local commercial construction company and a local architectural firm on what they've been working on and some of the cool places they've already created. Welcome back. We're talking about commercial development in the Quad Cities, and in addition to John Rule with Rule Commercial and Dave Gellerman with Hawkeye Commercial, we are joined by Jim Kesey, Senior Director of Operations with Estes Construction, and Andrew Dasso, owner of Streamline Architects. Thanks so much for joining us,
Thanks
gentlemen.
for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So, Jim, let's start with you. Your company has been around in the Quad Cities for quite some time. Some of them have been lean times, and some of them have been boom times. But just tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, so definitely in boom times. You know, right now, as we've heard earlier in this section. So, thriving market. It comes with challenges. We're primarily focused on commercial construction, which is a lot of the conversations today, as well as some mixed-use multifamily that folds into the amenity side of the commercial construction and attracting employers or employees for the employers into the industry. So booming times does not come without challenges in some of the supply chains, but it comes down to collaboration with all the partners, you know, like us at the table, of how do you overcome those obstacles and to make the project successful.
Give us an example of some of the projects that people would recognize that you've built in the Quad Cities.
So many K through 12 projects. One of our market sector areas is K through 12 schools for the local community. Historic renovations, so like a Gordon Van Tine Lofts around. Actually remodeled this studio a few years ago, so if anybody's here to look around, we've got a few patrons back at the office that will take pride in that. So, as well as a lot of industrial projects for Deere & Company is a big client of ours.
Let's talk a little bit about 30 years ago, which were, you know, the lean times. We were just coming out of, you know, recessionary times. This community was, you know, still reeling from plant closings and the like. What did you do back then?
Traveled. So, you know, it wasn't unique to the Quad Cities, but obviously Quad Cities is very industrial focused. So when you have that market shrink as much as it did, create a lot of challenges for not only construction companies, developers, design firms, but the employees as well. So there was a lot of travel. We were down in Florida doing projects, finding other geographic locations that the economy wasn't as soft, that afforded the opportunities.
John, Dave, you couldn't travel per se. What did you do during the lean times?
Well, I you know, to be honest, lean times were busy too. You know, we had a lot of vacancy. There were buildings that were opportunities that came up that were maybe a good fit. A lot of brokers maybe check out a little bit, and those that are there to work can do just fine. They're, you know, there's less competition, and so anyway, every significant change in the economy or the way we do business creates a commercial real estate opportunity in one way or another.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that makes sense. Andrew, tell us about your business. You know, architects, they're feast and famine as well. Give us an idea of what your company is all about.
We're really finding success in, you know, creating places and placemaking and creating experiences for the local community, also, you know, regionally. So, you know, one of the big successes we've had are local restaurants. A lot of the new restaurants that we've designed are really a big hit. Where our office is, the Rust Belt, we have, you know, a new concert venue and brewery and my wife's restaurant, and we have, you know, I think as long as we can continue to create spaces that people enjoy and enjoy the community and stay in the community, it'll make this, I don't know, long term versus short.
We've seen a recent trend in office buildings that are pretty slick. Tell us a little bit about that trend.
Yeah, we were fortunate to do the new TBK Bank building downtown Bettendorf. That was a great opportunity to show off some of our creativity and see, an office building that's right off of the bridge. But it also has a mixed use component. So there's a new restaurant, Yoso Japanese Steakhouse, that'll be opening this spring. The top 3 floors rented out fairly quickly. So I think there's a need for it. I think there's definitely vacancies that are being filled, and so we're finding that people are looking for expansion and ways to grow their company. So, finding creative ways to do that.
As an architect, though, we are seeing changing workforce and changes in what employees are expecting. And it looks like some of these office buildings, IH Mississippi Valley's headquarters on the river in Moline, you can see their beautiful cafeteria through those glass walls and a workout space. And are you seeing more demand for those kind of amenities?
Yeah, actually, we're seeing a lot of small renovations we classify it as, but a new reception or a place to your employees to enjoy the office environment, and bringing those employees back to the office. You have to encourage them to come back. So, if there's a new entrance or a new waiting area, break room, that all encourages your staff to collaborate more.
And are you also seeing in the market more trends toward more amenities in office space?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And businesses are willing to pay for it?
Well, it's a necessity.
Right.
Yeah.
In order to recruit, attract talent, and to really retain talent, that you have to put on a pretty good presentation to entice people.
There's a lot of competition for talent right now, everywhere you go, and John's absolutely right. That, companies understand that they need to bring that talent back to the office. They want the talent back in the office and keep them working for them and not going down the street.
And many companies are different, in terms of what that office mix looks like. Some companies are starting to realize that there are a component of employees that may be able to work from home, and it brings efficiency. Where others are saying, no, we need them back. So how do you attract them? What's our spatial requirements now coming out of the pandemic that used to densify, and now it's starting to expand? So there's a lot of moving targets that isn't across the board. It's very unique, targeted to different companies and what's starting to work for them in the new environment.
And somebody had mentioned earlier that the trend from open space with cubicles is not as popular now, going back to individual offices?
In some situations, yes. So what's 10 years ago, the progression was from hard wall to modular furniture to hoteling stations and micro cafes, and the only thing you own is a little file cabinet with a cushion, that you can push where you want to go. And now we're starting to see it slide back. So it's more modular furniture and even some hard wall scenarios in some of these designs.
And more space in between employees. Now, as you said, things were densifying where they were getting employees closer and closer together. Now, coming out of the pandemic, we're getting employees further and further apart from each other.
Yeah,
So,
people want
trend.
that separation now for health reasons. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But also because they're nice amenities, and again, it goes back to attracting employees and keeping them happy as well. Any, we know that you're probably all wrapped up in the here and now, but any predictions for the future? Do we expect this to be a long-term trend, or can you see what might be turning the corner?
I'd say from the construction side, for the foreseeable future, we all wish we had a crystal ball that could look out more in a few years, but we don't see a downturn anytime soon in it. And hopefully supply chain will start to relax some of the constraints we currently have. But that's going to take another at least 18 to 24 months before we really see that relax. So all indicators are great for the next few years. And if interest rates maintain, some stability there, should be green light.
Andrew, what do you got on the drawing board?
Well, we have a few things. MLK Park is down the hill from the station here, and it's we're planning to start this spring, and it's been kind of a fun, really unique experience for us. We also have a few restaurants that will be opening here in the next couple months that, like I mentioned, the Japanese Steakhouse, and anytime we can unroll a new restaurant that's different in this market, I think I'm really excited for, because it also, enhances, and you always hear the saying, people need something new, or, we have the same old stuff. Well, get out and experience it, because there are a lot of new things happening.
Yeah, it is an exciting time to be in the Quad Cities. That is for sure. Well, we're going to take a break, and next we're going to talk about selling the Quad Cities to the commercial market. But first, a look at your weather forecast. That's the Quad Cities in a promotional video helping sell what all the Quad Cities has to offer, from the river to races to everything in between. And this promotional video is posted on the Rural Commercial website. It's pretty exciting and fun to watch. Welcome back. And we're talking now about commercial real estate in the Quad Cities, but how it's being marketed outside of the Quad Cities. So John, this was on your website. So how is this helpful in attracting commercial real estate? It makes me want to move here or visit here, but how does it help commercial?
We have a great team locally. The Quad Cities Chamber of Commerce is very active in recruiting new businesses to the area, as well as helping existing businesses grow and better succeed. And I'm very involved with the Quad Cities Chamber, and it's a fun area to market. We really do have a lot going on, and that is something that we contemplated when putting that video together. I don't think people realize when you talk to someone from out of town, what the Quad Cities is. So we have a pretty interesting and compelling story to tell when you consider the large population and all the different amenities.
So when you're talking about a warehouse, it still has employees. So the idea is that you want to keep your employees happy, and so you want to introduce the community and all the fun things that we do here.
By all means.
Okay. So is it important to be marketing outside of this area when your market is this hot?
Oh, absolutely. We always need a good flow of business opportunities in the area. And also, companies that are here might wish to engage a supplier, provider, or other businesses and companies they partner with to be closer to them. And we do have a great advantage in that we have all the interstates that come together, as well as train, rail opportunities, as well as barge lines. So we're a great distribution hub.
Speaking of that, I was just on I-80, and there are huge warehouses going up everywhere along I-80. Makes sense right now because of, the e-commerce industry and the need for that warehousing. But what if that changes? What happens with all of those buildings if the economy changes? Is that a concern?
Well, I think yes. So the short answer is, of course, that's a concern. The people that are making the decision to locate in these warehouses have done the research. They understand, especially in today's logistics environment, it's sort of a hub and spoke where you need to be closer to the consumer, and that is something that, as with any business, it's a risk, but it's a mitigated risk in that they are considering all the options.
Yeah. Warehouses just aren't sexy.
Depends which side of the deal you're on.
Aesthetics or money.
Yes.
And I guess that they don't seem, in the mind of many, they don't seem to be, economy builders. You think of, an industrial site or a residential site, there's that feeling of sustainability. But warehouses from, the turn of the century are now being turned into you know, retail outlets and entertainment, right?
Yeah, so if you look at if that market would have attrition to it and the demand isn't there, look at downtown Davenport. You know, there's historically a retail mecca, an industrial mecca in some respects, that's now has historically been the hottest zip code in the Quad Cities, you know, from a mixed-use, multifamily, historic renovation standpoint. So just because one door closes, you know, one can open. So how do you repurpose those facilities into what the current demand in the market is?
So it's kind of ever-changing, isn't it, with what we have?
Multifamily, you know, is probably a segment that we should have touched on, but boy, probably the hottest segment in the commercial real estate business. And those multifamily conversions of the historic buildings are a hot item.
Well, I mean, we can talk more about that. Are there more projects in the works?
We're starting to finally see some greenfield type apartment development. And that's based on rents rising that will support new construction. And then a lot of the downtown activities were driven by historic tax credits. And there are people that have really focused on specializing in that area. And boy, the tenant demand is such that I don't think it's going away. You're not going to see as many people buying homes. That's going to be for reasons of financing, for, you know, putting together a down payment. Also, the younger employee today wants to remain mobile and transient. So if they get recruited for a job to Kansas City, they want to be able to quickly pull up roots and make that move.
Trends have changed. What used to be I want a white picket fence and a house is, you know, into more about experience. So these facilities that are downtown in these hubs, they have the experience, they have the bars, they have the restaurants, still have retail. So it's about the connectivity between everything's there. You know, how do you get grocery down there and some of those other items that help fuel those developments?
Which is a key. And then from on the investment side, and I spent a lot of time on the investment side, multifamily, there are many more investors looking to purchase multifamily projects than there are available inventory.
And we had talked about land, you know, just the availability is difficult. And we know, we mentioned Russell Construction is developing a farm that was surrounded by development. Is there any concern, though, about, you know, taking farmland, some of the richest in the world, as it's been described in Scott County, for example, taking that out of production? Are you getting pushback, I guess?
At times.
I would say it's a rarity. We've got a lot of land in Iowa.
Yes.
And Illinois. And, you know, there was a number done some years ago. I don't recall what it was, but something like 5% of the land in Iowa is in true economic use, you know, for commercial development. So I think we got a long way to go before that becomes a big issue.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, kind of being the devil's advocate to ask that question. All right. Well, this has been an exciting discussion. Do you have any final questions, Tom?
I guess the question I had, I was wondering if you guys are seeing differences or disparities on one side versus the other side of the river, if you're seeing different trends in Iowa compared to Illinois.
I would say that the market is hotter on the Iowa side, particularly I think we're seeing more industrial deals, warehouse deals being done on the Iowa side than the Illinois side. From a retail standpoint, I mean, there's still a population that lives on the Illinois side. So there's still, you know, pick Starbucks, for example. Starbucks, there's people on the Illinois side that drink coffee, people on the Iowa side. So Starbucks is doing sites on the Illinois side just like they're doing on the Iowa side.
Yeah, and there isn't as much land available, you know, especially in Moline, kind of landlocked between two rivers.
Yep,
So.
exactly true.
Yeah, a lot of it's geographic. It's geographic, demographic, and opportunity driven. You know, you've got a lot of ravines in Illinois, and you've got a lot of flat farms in Iowa.
Yep.
So, you know, some of that is not to do with, you know, the financial status or anything else. It's just geographic.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're going to let that be the last word. We appreciate you coming in. It's been a very interesting discussion, and we have more insight after the break. We want to take time to explain a little bit about Insight Magazine and our relationship with the Quad City Times. Associate Editor Tom Barton is back with some examples of what else you will find in the magazine. What have you been working on?
Yeah, so we have a reporter who will be working on a story looking at the issue of childcare, one of the biggest issues for employers right now, and getting parents back to work. You know, the state of Iowa has been offering incentives for employers to provide on-site child care. You know, does that make sense for employers? What's involved with that? You know, so that's one of the areas that we'll be diving into and looking at how people in the Quad Cities are trying to address that issue of childcare.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Huge. Another thing that we have a reporter working on is kind of providing an update looking at what's going on at the Arsenal, particularly with their 3D printer, and looking at new technologies and advancements that are being used to support manufacturing and support operations there at the Arsenal.
Wow, that is exciting too. And the whole concept of the magazine is to go a little deeper than the stories that you could do on a daily basis in the newspaper, right?
Correct, yeah. So this is really an opportunity to kind of let stories breathe, provide more detail, more context, and maybe a little bit more nuance than what we can do in the daily print edition, where, you know, readers are really kind of wanting more kind of short, digestible news stories, right? And so this is really an opportunity to kind of peel back and go in depth into more detail with some of those stories and looking at some of the different facets, issues, trends that are taking place.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do with this broadcast as well. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Stick around to see who's featured in today's Small Business Spotlight after the break. Before we leave you, we wanted to take time to shine the spotlight on another local small business. EVS Mobile Repair reached out to share their story. They are a local diesel repair company that opened in Rock Island in 2020. The business works with large fleets, single owner operators, and farmers. They're owned and operated by diesel mechanics or people with commercial driver's licenses, which allows them to better serve their customers. Thank you for sharing your story. And if you would like your business featured in our Small Business Spotlight, head to our website and look for the Insight page. There you'll find a place to answer a few questions and submit photos. And also, if you have comments or ideas that you want to learn more about our program, you'll find it under Insight. That wraps up today's edition, brought to you in partnership with the Quad City Times. I'm Marcia Lenz. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.